Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope we've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Today I'll be discussing the solved murder of James Bulger. This case takes place in the UK, making it the first case I've covered which takes place outside of the US. Let me just say that this case has to be the most heartbreaking and most disturbing case I've covered so far. Not only that, but if you're not familiar with this case, you're going to be in for a huge surprise when I tell you about the ones who murdered this precious little boy. And if you are a parent, I do caution you. Again, this case is just really heartbreaking and really disturbing. Here we go. James Bulger was born on March 16, 1990, in Kirby, Merseyside, England, to parents Ralph and Denise Bulger. Before James was born, his parents had a stillborn baby girl. James was described as a cute kid, a boy with a great sense of humor, always laughing and outgoing. On February 12, 1993, Denise took 2-year-old James to a shopping mall called the Strands Center. While in the mall, the mother and son went into a butcher's shop. As Denise was paying, James wandered outside. This would unfortunately be the last time Denise saw her baby boy alive. While only keeping her eyes off her son for only like a few seconds, she realized that James was missing. Denise contacted security to help her search for her son. When security couldn't find James, the police were contacted. Obviously, Denise was worried for her baby boy. The initial thought was that James was still somewhere in the mall. Finally, the police decided to look at the tapes, but I wonder why looking at the tapes was the last option. What I'm about to say will completely shock you if you are unfamiliar with this case. While looking at the tapes, it showed 2 boys walking out of the mall with James. Another tape outside showed the 3 heading towards the canal. The next day, the police held a news conference where Denise pleaded for James's safe return. While the police found out about this story, the initial thought was that these boys were like 12 to 13 years old. On February 13, 1993, 4 young boys were playing close to a railroad. As the boys were in this area, they found a body. Unfortunately, it would be revealed that this was the body of James Bulger. I'll explain the cause of death later on, but I just gotta say that this baby was found in a completely graphic state. It sucks that these boys had to be the ones to find him. James's uncle had to be the one to identify the body, and I'm sure that's an image he'll never get out of his head because I can't even begin to imagine. Hearing about James's death obviously devastated his parents. Like, this is the second child that they have lost, so they were clearly broken after hearing the tragic news. The community also grieved over the baby boy. Because of James's kidnapping and murder, this put parents on high alert. Parents were absolutely set on keeping a very close eye on their children. Since the kidnapping became a murder investigation, the police were also on high alert. Over 20 boys around the ages of 10 to 18 were questioned. There was one boy who was arrested but found to have had no involvement with James's murder. It was already too late for the kid because there was public outrage, so he and his family were forced to move, which is disappointing. Later on, the police received a tip from a woman who believed she knew the boys involved with James's murder. She described these boys as kids who were always skipping school and always up to no good. The name of these boys are Robert Thompson and John Venables, who were 10-year-olds at the time. On February 18, 1993, these 2 boys were arrested. Like the kids before them, they were only arrested to be ruled out, especially since the police believed they were too young to have had anything to do with the murder. But the investigators were in for a huge surprise. While the boys were being questioned in different rooms with their parents in the rooms, they were the youngest people who the investigators ever question. Since these two were kids, the investigators had to be gentle with them at first. At first, they had to figure out if the boys knew right from wrong and whether they knew lying was wrong. When the interrogations began, Thompson and Venables denied any involvement until Venables admitted that he and Thompson took James from the mall. Thompson would admit to taking James to the railroad, and Venables, who was emotional throughout the whole interrogation, admitted that he and Thompson murdered 2-year-old James. Thompson, on the other hand, was blaming it all on Venables, and the investigators have stated that Thompson showed no remorse at all. After the police received the information, they concluded that it was enough evidence to charge the boys. Here's what actually happened to James, and I'm really going to try to say this in the least graphic way possible because his murder was absolutely brutal, and it's unthinkable that 10-year-old boys could have been capable of something so demonic to a baby. The day James disappeared, Thompson and Venables were looking for a target that day. They skipped school and stole items. The two tried taking another boy before they found James. By the grace of God, the mother caught them, but I can only imagine what that mother is going through now, since her baby could have ended up exactly like James. As we know, Venables and Thompson did take James, but while they were out of the shopping center, they pushed him in attempts to make him get hit by a car to make it seem like an accident. The plan didn't work, but James was dropped on the head and had facial injuries. The two took him to a canal to make him kneel to look at it in hopes that he would fall, but James didn't. Witnesses did see the three together and noticed James crying. Most of the bystanders didn't intervene. Those who did ask Thompson and Venables why James was crying and bruised, they either said James was their little brother or that he was lost and that they were headed to the police station. Now, those who just ignored what happened, I just wish they would have tried to do something. It could have allowed James to be alive today. But as for those who did question Thompson and Venables, I can't really blame them like others have. Like, it was the early 90s. They didn't really have any reason to doubt the boys. There weren't many stories of kids killing kids, especially babies. The last thought in their minds would have been that Thompson and Venables would have killed James. Thompson and Venables would take James to the railroad to attack, stone, and sexually assault this little boy. The two left James to die, and the train came by. You can guess what I mean from that. I literally can't say how this boy's body was found. It's honestly just too much. You might be wondering why these two boys would do something so demonic. Other than sin being the reason, these two didn't have a great home life. Not that I'm giving an excuse at all. There are people who just have awful childhoods, but they don't grow up to be monsters and harm others. Thompson grew up with an alcoholic father who was violent. His father did leave the family. His mother was depressed and tried to kill herself at one point. The Thompson brothers also treated each other terribly. Venables' parents split up and he lived with his mother. Teachers described him as an attention seeker. I guess he was that way because his other two siblings had learning disabilities, so his mother must have paid more attention to them. So while in school, he did attack another student and just showed wild behavior. Once again, I'm not justifying what these two did at all, but I want you to have an understanding of how their lives were before James's murder took place. 17 days after James's kidnapping, he was buried. The public found out that Thompson and Venables were responsible, and they were furious, even to the point where many people wanted to harm the killers. 8 months later, the trial began. Denise didn't go to court. First, she was pregnant and she couldn't handle it emotionally. On November 14, 1993, the jury decided on a verdict. Denise was present that day, and the killers were found guilty. When it came to their sentencing, the judge gave the two only 8 years in a local authority care facility. The sentencing upset James's parents, and they wanted Thompson and Venables to serve more years. Denise believed the boys should have served like 15 years, so she decided to fight it. She was able to win the victory, but the victory would be taken away from her. The courts didn't want political influence affecting the decision that was already made, so the 15-year prison sentence went back to 8 years, which completely devastated Denise and Ralph. Thompson and Venables were in two different facilities. What I'm about to say is about to blow your mind if you don't know much about this case. While in these excellent facilities worth tons of money, the two received one-on-one tutoring, would get to play video games, go on trips, and were allowed to go shopping. Like, in other words, these boys were basically rewarded for killing a 2-year-old little boy who didn't even get to live his life. Like, this information has upset the public and, most importantly, James's parents. In June of 2001, Thompson and Venables were released when they were 18. These two were given new identities to protect them from any retaliation. No one is allowed to know their new identities, and it is completely illegal in the UK to release them. Thompson and Venables aren't even allowed to contact each other at all either. So while Thompson hasn't reoffended yet, Venables has been reckless these past several years. Before even being released, he had sexual relations with a woman who worked at the facility. In 2008, he was arrested for getting into a drunken fight. In 2010, he was arrested for having child porn on his computer, but was released in 2013. Because of all this, he received multiple new identities, which is not cheap at all and completely unfair to the UK citizens. Like, their taxpayer money has to go to these two monsters who haven't really been punished for the crime they committed all those years ago. Pretty much, there is no redemption for these two unless they repent of their sins and trust in Jesus Christ alone to save them. But we'll have to see what happens with them in the future. As for Ralph and Denise, their pain of losing James sadly tore them apart when it would have been best for them to get closer together. Despite this hole in their lives with James gone, they're still pressing on. Denise remarried a man named Stuart Fergus and had 2 more sons by him. James's death was violent, disturbing, devastating, and senseless. It's such a shame that he had to lose his life so soon in such an awful way. I can't stand how those who killed him didn't really pay for what they did. They took a baby boy away from his parents and negatively affected the lives of others. James would be like 29 years old right now, and I'm just heartbroken that Thompson and Venables get to live their lives while James isn't here living his life. That's all I've got to say. If you've got any thoughts on this case, please leave your thoughts in the comments section. If you'd like for me to cover a certain case, please let me know. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos from me, and click the bell to be notified about the next video. I'll see y'all next time for True Crime Tuesdays. I'll talk to y'all later.